And recording as well, right?
Yep, you are live now.
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Coalition for Just Hamilton County's political forum featuring the candidates for Cincinnati City Council. We have a political forum that began on October the 4th. This evening, scheduled to appear during the first half of tonight's forum are Logan Peter Simmering, Mika Owens, Michelle Dillingham, and Reggie Harris. During the second half, from 8 to 9, we're scheduled for Scottie Johnson, Stacy Smith, Tierra Powell, and Kurt Grossman. During tonight's forum, each candidate will have an opportunity to initially introduce themselves for 1 minute, followed by questions of 3 different moderators or co-moderators, including myself, Carol Patton, as well as Barbara Wolf. Dr. Vanessa Enoch will be handling all of the technology for this evening. And Mike Shyrock and Diane Beaker will be assistant timekeepers along with Blue Sky Timer. Ground rules for our candidates. We just want to remind you that this is timed and we have done our best to ensure everyone receives equal time. So we just ask that when you see the timer or hear the timer or someone call time, that you would respectfully wrap up that sentence so that we can proceed with the next candidate. We will rotate candidates so that no one is asked the same question first in each round. Are there any questions before we begin? If not, again, for all of those who are watching by way of Zoom or on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. If we do have any questions from the audience, if we have an opportunity to work those in, we will definitely do so. So please, if you're in Zoom, you can put your question in the chat. If you're on Facebook, drop it in Facebook, and hopefully someone will find your question, and we'll do our best to present your question to the candidates this evening. Again, our first candidates for tonight are Michelle Dillingham and Reginald Harris. I know that we have confirmed 2 other candidates that are not yet on, but we are going to begin our forum this evening. More questions for them. So with that, good evening, Michelle Dillingham and Reginald Harris. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, glad that you could join us. I see you're driving, and I am aware that there are other forums and things that are going on this evening. We appreciate your participation. And just so everyone knows, we will be informing our audience of those who either failed to participate, that were invited, or confirmed and failed to show up. Starting off, I'll start with you, Michelle Dillingham. If you would please just take a minute and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great, thank you. My name is Michelle Dillingham. I'm running for Cincinnati City Council. This is the 3rd time voters will see me on the ballot. I have run twice in the past. I've been, really compelled to run because I feel very strongly about a lot of issues in our city that I feel we need strong leadership at City Hall, leadership that is there to not just serve the wealthy and connected, but to take up the issues for all Cincinnatians. And so I'm running. I am asking for your vote on November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Reginald Harris, you could unmute yourself. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So feel free to call me Reggie Harris. I'm on the ballot as Reggie Harris. Reggie Harris, I'm an endorsed Democrat running for Cincinnati City Council. I'm a clinical social worker by training. I work in affordable housing development. I come to this moment as an extension of my professional experience working in clinical social work, working in affordable housing development, and recognizing that interventions that really help people in their lives, interventions that help cities grow equitably, are only successful when you have cities that value equitable growth and sustainability, that value serving people. And so I'm running to be a part of a team of folks that help shape Cincinnati to be a city where all people can thrive. And so I'm looking forward to discussing more about what that means with everyone.
Thank you, very much. I'll start the questions for this evening. And Michelle, I'll begin with you. The first question that we would all like to know is, what do you personally consider Cincinnati's 3 most pressing concerns?
Great, thank you. So I'm not sure, oh, there's a timer, okay. So the 3 most pressing concerns, I believe, are really tax abatements as it relates to development and the inclusion of neighborhoods and people who pay taxes, people who live in a city, as it relates to the decision-making around how our public resources are used to build up our city. Economic inclusion is wrapped into that. I feel strongly that our budget process has been totally lacking in authentic community input. I feel strongly that we need more investments in public health, in recreation, in those things that lift up many of our families, a third of which are subsisting at below the federal poverty line in this city. So those are just a few examples of what I think is
And
important.
Michelle, you actually have about 30 more seconds. I forgot to reset the timer, so go ahead.
Okay, 30 more seconds. I will just add that, I'm really excited about a new council and a new mayor, because there's so much decision making that's been going on that really pushes out people who are most directly impacted by those decisions. And so I'm really interested in getting back to a city hall where the people's business and the people's money is fully accessible in our committee structure for decision making. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Reggie Harris. What do you consider Cincinnati's 3 most pressing issues that you would address if elected to city council?
Yes, so 3 issues: budget, housing, jobs. Our budget, we are facing a hostile takeover from Columbus in terms of infringing on our income tax and our earnings tax. We've seen a cut in our local government fund, the repeal of the state tax. We see that the past decade, the administration has taken funds from the operational budget to put it into the capital budget. And so we're going to have to do a top to bottom, bottom to top overhaul and analysis of our expenditures to align for efficiencies and to figure out how we not only recover from COVID, but also be prosperous and grow. Our housing, we are simply lacking a housing plan that is attached to metrics, a housing plan that states the need for housing, the numbers, the zip codes, and then using the tools that we have in place to get there. We currently leave money on the table. The research tells us that is a threshold for families really being able to make the transition out of poverty. So those are our 3 pressing issues that are all interrelated.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Carol Patton.
Good evening, and thanks to both of you for joining us. My question: how do you recommend that the city of Cincinnati use or distribute the $290 million that it received as part of the American Rescue Plan Act?
We should start with Reginald Harris on this question.
I'm sorry.
Yes. So, Carol, I appreciate that question. And for me, a foundational direction we need to do is we need to think about our COVID economic recovery and really shoring up small businesses, particularly with a particular emphasis on Black-owned and women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses. It is incredibly important that we don't lose or secede any ground that we have made, and that we also are ensuring that we're creating new pipelines and new connections to jobs and revenue generating. So while we want to recover and use those dollars, we really want to leverage those dollars to think about growth in this next decade. And then the second thing is thinking about using those rescue plan dollars to just shore up our budget, right? To make sure that, as I began, when I talked about before, that top to bottom, bottom to top sort of analysis and retooling, that we're plugging in holes in our deficit so that we can have a good foundation and a good base, right, to begin thinking about our growth and our equity. So in my mind, those two strategies, really sort of like firming up the budget, and then also thinking about small businesses is really kind of where I am in the process. But, you know, we will be in a different space when that time comes. And so I will also be open to listening to the community and being responsive to that moment.
Thank you. Michelle, the same question.
Thank you. Yes, you know, it's a great question because really I pondered this question when the money was actually released. Other cities were having community input sessions. They were looking at what was the most pressing needs of the community. And instead, all Cincinnati got was a series of press conferences by this mayor announcing how he wanted to spend the money. It was totally disrespectful to taxpayers, to the people of this city, in a time when we have the Metro bus system cutting our student routes. So we're packing high school kids on our buses amid a highly contagious Delta variant. We have evictions happening. We already were one of the top counties in the whole country for the number of evictions. We have a public health budget at the city that has been cut over the years. And so we have major needs for this city. And that's the question. Your question should have been asked, right? When the money came down, we should have had public forums. We should have had a needs assessment, right? What are the most pressing needs as it relates to COVID in this time? So I'm so looking forward to electing people who are going to be responsive to the needs of the people, not the needs of 4th Street and the business community and those who are looking to make a profit from City Hall. We have had enough of that. It's time for people who pay their taxes, who live in our neighborhoods, to finally be heard and get those resources they desperately need from City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Webb?
Yes. What is, I guess I'm asking Michelle first. What is your opinion on how current TIF, tax increment financing dollars, are distributed?
Thank you, Barbara, for the question. You know, this is a topic that I personally spent a couple years educating myself because I work at the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers. And what we learned when Mayor John Cranley tried to shove through at the very last hour in December of 2019, 15 new TIF districts, the question was, how is this going to impact neighborhoods and the dollars that those property taxes are supposed to go to, right? Libraries, senior programming, our public schools, mental health. Well, guess what? We demanded an audit 2 years ago. We've still not had one. And so that is an unanswered question. When I am elected to City Council, I pledge to you that we will have transparency in these TIFs. And we really need to find out, is this the best use of our dollars? Are we getting a true return on investment for diverting public monies into funds that only go to the surrounding neighborhoods of that project? There are many egregious examples where people have taken advantage of these tax diversion and tax avoidance measures, right? Look at the Great American Building. They didn't pay their property tax bill for years until the teachers union discovered it and put some lawyers on the case, right? So this is a huge topic. We need more transparency. Thank you for the question.
Reggie, the same question is for you. What is your opinion on how the current TIF, tax increment financing dollars, are distributed?
I share a similar sentiment as my colleague, Michelle Dillingham. The main issue that we are seeing in Cincinnati is that we allow tools for investment to drive the narrative versus using those tools to reach a goal, right? So TIF dollars, when we have a housing plan that is rooted in equity, that has real numbers attached to it, number of units across zip codes that we want to create, then we can start to use those tools to reach that end, and not as just tools for those who have money to play with, who want to just play at development. Right, so we just there's not a constructive use of the tools that we have. We also, are using TIFs in a very rudimentary way. You can set aside money at any sort of up to 15%, I believe, for education. So there's no reason do all the things we need to do in terms of investing in communities and also supporting public education. And then again, as Michelle said, the rules around TIF should just be transparent, right? There's nothing in that says that they have to be convoluted or says that they have to, be so, hidden. We can have them on our website and we can say this is the criteria, and then we just follow that criteria. It's pretty simple.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Reggie?
The
Okay.
next question, and I believe I'll start with Reggie on this question, is what causes of justice have you stood for or fought for in Cincinnati to date?
That's actually a really great question. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to highlight two. First is about food justice and addressing the food desert in Avondale. So I worked for a national nonprofit real estate development company, and our goal was to bring a grocery store to Avondale. And we spent 7 years in that pursuit, but we arrived at that pursuit. And not only did we arrive at a grocery store, but we have a Black-owned grocery store that will bring fresh fruit, fresh produce, and shelf-stable products at an affordable rate, written into the community benefits agreement. That was a labor of love, and that was a labor of justice. The second thing, I chaired the transportation committee for the Hamilton County Human Services Chamber, and we wanted to ensure that we included funds for low-income families and those agencies that serve low-income families to be able to access bus passes and monthly passes at a discounted rate. And we did that with the Transportation Empowerment Fund. We went down everywhere to get those dollars, and now $500,000 annually is set aside for discounted bus passes. So those are two things that I feel very proud of, and were really sort of a labor of love and a labor of justice.
Thank you very much. Michelle, what causes of justice have you stood for or fought for in Cincinnati to date?
Right. So 7 years ago, I was a founding member of the Cincinnati Educational Justice Coalition, which was tapping into a national movement to really talk about the attacks on public education and how our children and families were really losing at the federal, state, and local levels as it relates to education funding. Fast forward, we were really at the tip of the spear as it relates to the FC soccer stadium and their attempts at total avoidance of paying their fair share of property taxes. We also fought for a better deal for our schools from the 1999 tax exemption agreement. And so I was one of the people behind the scenes kind of figuring out how to explain tax abatements, how to explain TIFs, how to really get parents activated around defending the funding that their children deserved from tax dollars and that they were losing due to corporate, really greed. So I'm really proud of that work. The 1999 agreement, we increased it by 5%, the pilot payments that will now go back to Cincinnati Public, and also FC Soccer, those billionaires that own it now have to pay a higher rate, not their full freight, but at least a little bit more than what they had wanted to when it started. So it's a constant push, and I'm really proud of being part of that work.
Thank you very much. Ms. Patton.
Okay, Mr. Harris, as a city council member, how will you use your influence to attract businesses and increase development within the city of Cincinnati?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so the answer is going to be very simple, but then I'll explain more. We just have to do it. So here's why I say that. For the past 30 years, Cleveland and Columbus have out-applied and been out-awarded tax credit awards for affordable housing and development in the city. The very tools that allow us to create affordable units, we just have been leaving money on the table. And we haven't had someone that's championing, picking up the mantle and really going after the resources that we have available. This is what I do in my professional life. This is what I do day to day. And so it won't be a stretch for me to be able to be in a position in council and be a part of that team of folks who are saying, hey, here are opportunities, and here are opportunities. Get us to that moment. When we build houses, then we attract jobs, and jobs and houses then attract commercial development and economic development. So they all work together hand in hand. But we really, in this city, have sort of our first step into really making that shift is to just use all the resources that are available to us, and to have folks who know what to do with those resources and who know how those resources impact communities.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, same question?
I'm sorry, can you restate the question again?
Sure, no problem. As a city council member, how will you use your influence to attract businesses and increase development within the city of Cincinnati?
That's a good question. So we are a really awesome city, right? We have a hot housing market. People are buying up property. We are a thriving city in many ways. What I see as the challenge is really not that we are a languishing, divested city that nobody wants to come to. I think as a seated council member, the challenge is to make sure that as people come to our city to look to do business, that we do some inclusive business making with the people that live here, right? With the students that are coming out of our schools, partnering with our universities, right? So it's not that we're lacking business coming in. What I think we really need to focus on is using our talent that we have right here in our city to uplift the families that live here. So many times you hear people frustrated to see out of town people getting jobs and coming in. Look, our census shows that we've actually lost African-American families for the first time in decades. African-American households are on the decline in our city. So as a seated council member, I hope to do this work, but do it with some real intention around inclusion of the families that live here.
Okay, thank you. Barbara?
I think you're muted, Barb.
Barb, you need to unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted now.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Michelle, what is your position on allowing social workers to assist police on police runs to implement mental health and de-escalation techniques for the mentally ill?
Well, what a great question for Reggie Harris and myself, because we're both social workers. So we basically, I'll just speak for myself. So look, being a social worker really means something, right? I mean, we are a credentialed, highly professionalized, profession. What I will say is that for calls for service, many times if someone's calling 911, there is an emergency going on. So I would never say that social workers should replace people responding to 911 calls. But I do see the value in a tandem situation where there could be a social worker accompanying a call for service, especially if there is some indication that the call is about someone who's maybe demonstrating some erratic behavior or maybe has some sort of emergency with their mental health. So I can see a place for that, certainly. Let me just say this. We are so far away from really, truly working well on this because we have an FOP president who mocks social workers regularly, and that is just not productive. I look forward to positive conversation with our police about this issue.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
Reggie?
agree with Michelle. So there are
what
two things I think that's important about this conversation. Cincinnati really, in many ways, because of our collaborative agreement, is leading in policing. And so we actually do have social workers who work in the police department. We have social workers that work out of Women Helping Women, and they are the responders to domestic violence calls. So I think it's very interesting to lift up that this works. What happens is that this is not a systemically supported practice, in that even when there are instances of like engagement, sometimes police are still called to transport residents, and then an escalation happens, right? And so, as Michelle said, having social workers involved in policing is not about social workers being beat cops, right? It's not about social workers, putting on a hat and getting in a car, but it's about those where folks are transported once they might be detained by police, right? What do those police stations look like, and what are the resources that are inside of a police station? Do you necessarily go all the way to a cell, or do you actually go to a room with someone and you have an evaluation? So I think that we don't have to be so narrow as to think that social workers and policing mean social workers sort of taking on those same roles, but it's really about how social workers can supplement the engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This question, I believe it starts with Reggie. Why are you affiliated with the Democratic Party?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Like many folks, it's a part of my identity, it's a part of my legacy, and it's a part of my value set. I am a fourth generation Chicagoan, born and raised on the south side of Chicago. My grandmother, is a Democrat. My great grandmother, voted independently, but always voted as a Democrat. And my family has just been involved in politics. So there's an identity piece there. But I do want to say, and I want to be very honest about this, the Democratic Party is not without fault. The Democratic Party many times has taken Black voters for granted. The Democratic Party, talks a lot about equity and maybe doesn't show up in our national systems. I recognize that. But in the past 30 years, the Democratic Party has been the party that has made some attempt to come out of the ice ages. Right? The Democratic Party is where advocacy is pushing forward candidates and leadership. And so I'm proud to be associated with a party that is moving forward, and not a party that has doubled down on racism, doubled down on excessive capitalism and greed, doubled down on just, goofy town, right? Like we are a party that is really have tried to be committed to the words that we use all the time, equity and engagement and inclusion. It's not perfect, but I feel that I have a place and a voice in this party.
Thank you. Michelle Dillingham, why are you affiliated with the Democratic Party, and has that always been your party of choice?
Yes, it has. I've been affiliated. In fact, I've been in leadership in our local party for many years, helping other candidates run, being a very active precinct executive, helping get out the vote. The values of our party in terms of supporting organized labor, LGBTQ+, immigration reform, criminal justice, equity, equality. I mean, the values are ones that I certainly embrace politically. You can imagine how it's felt not receiving the endorsement of my party this round, given the fact that I was endorsed twice over. I've been very active in leadership, as I said. But we're supposed to be a big tent. There's a lot of there's a spectrum of Democrats, and politics is politics. And I'll just say that I've said this before, I'm running as a Democrat. I plan to win as one, and I plan to govern as a Democrat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've been joined by candidate Mika Owings. Mika, will give you an opportunity to answer the same question. Is why are you affiliated with the Democratic Party, and have you always been affiliated with the Democratic Party?
Yes, well, thank you so much. As you know, it's a busy cycle, and so just came from another event, so thank you for having me. Yeah, I have always been a Democrat, born and raised here in Cincinnati, grew up in Avondale, working union household, right? Hardworking family. So I grew up understanding the value of what it means to work hard. Raised my son as a single mom there. He's a firefighter in the Air Force, but as a single mom in Avondale, I've also been on CMHA's waiting list. And so when I think about housing in this city, in this community. And I think about a party that's affiliated with lifting up people and fighting for living wages, fighting for working class people. I identify as a Democrat. And so as to vote, I have affiliated in that way. Equal rights, rights for women, LGBTQ rights, all of those things. The party of the people is what I identify with. And so that's why I'm a Democrat, and continuing to fight for those things around equity and justice and fairness and voting rights. As an organizer, 2016, decided to organize and kept organizing ever since. And so I am certainly affiliated with a party that wants to make sure we are protecting our most fundamental right.
Thank you very much, Ms. Patton.
Okay. Mr. Harris, what is your position on the existing residential tax abatement program?
So my opinion on the existing residential tax abatement program is quite similar to my opinion on our TIF program, is that it again is a tool that is being used without a clear goal in mind. Tax abatements in and of themselves are not bad, but when they are not used equitably, when they are not serving a purpose to drive development forward in communities that have been historically disinvested, then they result in displacement, right? So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a tool that can be positively used that is being negatively impacted because we have not developed a plan that guides the use of residential tax abatements, right? So there's, simple things, communities that have higher than averages median incomes, and communities that have houses that are $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 are not necessarily communities that should be getting the majority of tax abatements. That's a no-brainer, right? But again, where's the policy that states that we won't do that, right? Where is the accountability factor, the plan that states that we're going to use tax abatements in these zip codes for these types of residencies to increase average income, to increase X, Y, and Z. So we just have to have a plan to use what is ultimately a good tool for investment.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, the same question, or do I need to read it for you? And you need to unmute.
Got you. No, I'm fine. Is the timer? Oh, there it is. Okay. So we are operating under a system where the city council is now being sued for promulgating, for operating a discriminatory policy. So in a time period that the lawsuit identifies, $77 million went to enrich the 6 wealthiest, whitest neighborhoods, while at the same time, only $7 million went to the remaining African-American neighborhoods. On its face, that is discriminatory. This city council has done nothing to fix it. I'm so encouraged to hear other candidates, hopefully candidates who will win, myself included, who have the political will and the courage to make such needed, desperately needed change. Yes, this is incentive tool. It's basically a way to allow people to not pay their full freight in taxes. It's a tax break, and the wealthiest, whitest of us have been getting it. And that needs to end. It needs to be fixed. And what has this council done? They are asking their lawyer to dismiss the case, which I think is the wrong direction. Thank you. That's my time.
And thank you. Okay, Ms. Owens, thanks for joining us. Should I read the question again for you?
I don't think so. I think it's around what do you feel about tax abatements? And so one, I'm just echoing that yes, tax abatements are a strategy, but that strategy, we have to be real about the issues. And the issues are we have an affordable housing crisis, and we've got folks that can't find housing and families that can't find housing. So we only use incentives that help us get to a goal. But we have to lay out that those goals through strategy and through policy that are aligning with where we're trying to go. And so the opportunity that the city has is to really coalesce behind what that looks like. Housing is something that we know is very layered. There's multiple components to it, including reducing eviction rates, building more stock, all of those things. And so until we understand what our blueprint is, what our direction is, we're always going to be piecemealing it. And so now it's time to stop, get on the same page, and what direction we're going in. And so for me, I look at housing our future as a blueprint, as a starting point for getting us there. So again, a strategy and a policy that are aligned.
Thank you.
I think it's I'm taking over now.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask Michelle Dillingham, what is your position on using tax abatements to attract businesses to the city of Cincinnati?
Thank you for the question. So, the question is this tool that we have been using, and let's be honest, it's billions of public subsidies, right? It's billions and billions of dollars in the form of tax abatements and TIFs and the rest. And so there was an audit after there was community pressure, which I'm proud to have been a part of that community pressure, along with the Enquirer, that said, hey, is the city really getting a good return on investment from these incentives that we're giving out? And that included like job creation tax credits and the rest. And lo and behold, the independent audit showed that in fact, the city's not getting a good return on investment, but they could if they were a little more intentional about, how they use the incentive. And also, by the way, there are no clawbacks, right? And there's no enforcement and there's no monitoring, right? So there's so much that needs to be done in these programs. And let's be honest, we've had a mayor who's really just he stood on the steps of City Hall and said, hey, I get to do this. I'm in my rights from the charter to wheel and deal development deals. Well, sir, that is just not true. The charter, our Constitution says, no, that is not how things are supposed to be done. So hopefully with a new council and a new mayor, we will have a better return on investment with those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mika, I'm going to ask you that's the same question. What is your position on using tax abatements to attract businesses to the city of Cincinnati?
Again, I think it's about what is our goal. We need to we need to attract employers and organizations and businesses who are going to provide good paying jobs. And so if that is not connected to an incentive like a tax abatement, then we need to thoroughly examine what we're doing with that. Again, we have to operate. What city council has the opportunity to do is set a vision around where we want to go as a city. And if our policies are not reflecting what that vision is, more jobs, more housing, connecting people to jobs, transportation, all of those things, then we are doing ourselves a disservice and the constituents of this city. So again, if it's not reaching the goal of providing more jobs for people, then we should not be doing that.
Thank you. Reggie, what is your position on using tax abatements to attract businesses to the city of Cincinnati?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think my answer is going to be very similar to my colleagues. I would rephrase the question is, what do we want to see out of it, right? What increase in business do we want to see in our community? What types of businesses do we want to see in our community, and where do we want to see these businesses? Then we would say, then commercial tax abatements are a tool to get to that point. But the point being, from various angles, is that what do we want to be as a city? How do we want to grow, and who do we want to provide opportunities to? The idea of tax abatements and incentives is to provide opportunities for one, investment in communities that have been historically disinvested, and two, for folks who are maybe smaller businesses, maybe don't have as many opportunities, to have some financial breathing room to invest. if these incentives are not doing those things, then they're not being used correctly, and we're going to have outcomes that, again, sort of continue to perpetuate discrimination and racism in housing and business and development. So again, those tools themselves, no, are not bad, but when they are just, giveaways, and we as a city we feel we don't value ourselves. I think an issue with Cincinnati is Cincinnati doesn't value how valuable this city is. And so we think that when someone says, like, I want to build here, we just say, hey, you can do whatever you want, instead of saying, like, okay, great, well, here are the terms, here are the conditions.
Thank you very much. And just for audience clarification, if you thought there were two exact questions back to back, the first one had to deal with residential tax abatements, and the second one had to deal with business tax abatements. Just understand that there was a difference in that question. I'm going to ask an audience question now, as I promised earlier, that if there were those from Facebook or Zoom that might want to also pose a question. So I'm going to ask the first one, and it's from Doug Springs, and he wants to know, he says that there was a city plan written in the early 1900s called the 2000 Plan. In 2021, is there a city plan for now and near future? That's from Doug Springs. I'll start with you, Mika. Sorry.
I don't know if there is a plan, which is the opportunity. And it's good to know that we've had leaders in this city who have done really great things. Things around engagement, community engagement, things around sustainability. And so dusting these things off is where, again, the opportunity to move us forward. And we can't operate without a plan and think that we are going to become a city of growth and a city of innovation. And so whatever plans might be in existence that were from the past, we certainly should be examining those things. And it's about prioritizing what is right. And again, that's the opportunity that we have to move our city forward. And the political will, I guess, if you want to call it that, which is always such a strange phenomenon to me, because it's about serving the people and serving the constituents of this city. And so again, moving us forward in a way that is concerted, that is based on strategy, that is based on goals and outcomes, we have to do that. And if that also means creating new plans, which obviously I think that is also the opportunity, that's what we need to do.
Thank you. Reggie Harris, I'll ask the same question of you. Doug Spring asks, he says there was a city plan written in the early 1900s called the 2000 Plan. In 2021, is there a city plan for now and near future?
So the short answer is no. We have a number of recommendations. We have our housing strategy, Housing Our Future, that was done by a coalition of folks headed by LISC, that lays out strategies for developing affordable housing. Ready Cincinnati has some recommendations around economic development. We have a Green Cincinnati plan, right? We have SORTA has its Go Metro or something along that line. So there are these strategies and suggestions, but what is not present is the city's, the city's sort of a digestion, summary, analysis of how those plans will be implemented in the city of Cincinnati and how we will utilize our budget dollars and our tools to move the city forward in the next decade. So no, that unified, plan that addresses all of the issues, right? Because when you talk about a city plan, and we often talk about issues in silos, housing does not exist without jobs. Jobs do not exist without transportation. Transportation does not exist without safety. Accessibility cuts through all of those things. And so when we say a city plan, we have to be thinking about all of those issues together. And we were talking about justice. Climate justice is at the forefront of all of those issues. And so no, short answer.
Thank you. And finally, Michelle Dillingham.
So we actually do have a plan. It's called Plan Cincinnati. We spent 3 years of stakeholder engagement. It was unanimously passed by City Council in 2012. It was supposed to guide all future decisions of development, neighborhoods, and It mapped out food deserts. It was an incredible body of work. It was called Plan Cincinnati. It's actually on the city's website. And here's the thing. It was basically shelved. And for political reasons, I will just say it because I always do, and that's what people know about me. John Cranley really has been leading according to a grudge, and that is that body of work was really led by Roxanne Qualls and neighborhood leaders for years. And so we do have a plan. And in that plan, a big part of that was to respect the neighborhood plans and to use the city administration to uplift neighborhood planning processes. But guess what we've been doing for the last so many years, especially under this mayor, which is to just throw out the neighborhood plan when it's not expedient for him and his donors. We see this in park all across the city. So let's get back to good planning. Yes, and we have one. Maybe it needs a refresh, but we need elected officials who will respect it.
Thank you very much. Ms. Patton.
Okay, this will be for Mika Owens. And the question is, what is your plan to eliminate the health disparities in the city of Cincinnati, such as infant mortality, COVID-19, heart disease, and stroke?
Wow, a lot of things. So one, I think about the built environment. And when we're talking about housing and the opportunity to improve our housing infrastructure, it also has to be one that we are thinking about green space. We are thinking about how we're building. We are thinking about sustainability within those initiatives as well. And so I also think about how do we provide safer and healthier communities in terms of access to healthcare, behavioral healthcare access, mental health, all of these pieces. And one thing that I've learned in the past year and a half, supporting our Hamilton County Public Health Department through the pandemic efforts, is that that is certainly an opportunity for us to provide more engagement around, more funding to make sure they are efficient and operating effectively, and educating people on the role of public health. And we can do so much through that. As it relates to the same thing with the pandemic and COVID, it's about connecting people. It's about answering their questions. It's about using validators. And when I think in the overall structure of government, that's why community engagement is so important, so that when we come to, a time of emergency, people are not thinking, okay, well, what is the public health department? This person calling me right now, contact tracing and doing all these things. And so we have an opportunity, again, to do better around engagement, but also in elevating our public health systems and agencies as well, and working across the county with that.
Right, thank you. Michelle Dillingham, same question.
I'm sorry, can you restate the question again?
Sure. What is your plan to eliminate the health disparities in the city of Cincinnati, such as infant mortality, COVID-19, heart disease, and stroke?
Great. Well, disparity, I'm assuming that you're talking about racial disparity and probably income disparities, right? Where the poorest.
Well, yes, in regards to health.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, look, we have had a council who has not prioritized health. Public health. Look at what happened during COVID when we had literally our city's school teachers out there in tents distributing food to our students. There was no cohesive plan with the community. Look, the orientation of coming up with solutions must center the very people who are impacted in the middle of the room, to ask, how do we need to deliver these services? Where do they need to be delivered? What is the best route to do this? And this administration and this council has done that so poorly. They literally seem to have no idea on how to engage and uplift the community. In fact, they just seem completely uninterested. I am so hopeful that people like the three that are on this panel right here that bring in this orientation of public policy will do so much better on these and so many other issues. My time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Reginald Harris, Reggie Harris.
Yeah, Reggie Harris. Yeah, so I mean, I just think about the origin of disparities, right? So common health disparities in marginalized and Black communities are diabetes, asthma, and hypertension. And so when you think about diabetes, I immediately think about lack of access to healthy foods and what causes that. That grocery stores leave the neighborhood because of racist housing policies that doesn't allow capital to be funneled into Black communities. When you address communities having access to capital, then you create opportunities for folks to be able to have amenities in their neighborhoods. You think about asthma. Asthma is exacerbated by a declining housing stock, housing that poor ventilation and, carpets that haven't been changed in decades. Again, when you start to address quality housing, that is an intervention to address asthma. Hypertension is the same thing about stress. The cortisol levels at which Black people live with, right, because of trauma, because of community violence, because of racism, has an actual medical impact on our health. So when we begin to address those systems, we are addressing health disparities, in addition to just our public health infrastructure, right, that centers, as Michelle said, the lives of people in policy decisions. When policy decisions are separated from people's lived experiences, that is when we wind up with things like gentrification, right? Because it becomes a theoretical practice and not a response to people's lived conditions.
All right, thank you. Barbara?
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Reggie?
it's 7:57, and what time did we get started, Dr. Enoch?
7:04.
All right, it's time for us to wrap up. So I am going to give each candidate an opportunity to, for 1 minute, to express to our listening and Zoom audience, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, why it is that you are running for Cincinnati City Council and why should they vote for you. And we'll start with you, Reggie.
Right. Thank you so much, Coalition for Just Hamilton County, for this opportunity. I'm Reggie Harris. I'm running for Cincinnati City Council because my experiences as a clinical social worker who works in affordable housing development have led me to the reality that cities can only grow equitably and sustainably when you have leaders who value that work, folks who do that work in their day-to-day and they want to bring that service to City Hall. But I want you to vote for me, but I also want you to vote to think about assembling a team of folks that can get this done, because I alone cannot do this work. I have to work in concert with people who have shared values. So voters have the awesome task of assembling a powerhouse team of folks that understand policy, that understand people-centered work, and understand how to get things done in large systems. So again, thank you so much for your time. Reggie Harris for Cincinnati City Council, reggieforcincinnati.com.
Thank you, Michelle Dillingham.
Okay, so I'm Michelle Dillingham. I'm again asking for one of your votes so that I can serve you at Cincinnati City Council. We need someone at City Council who really understands how it works down there. I've worked down there for 4 years. I've been intimately involved for years on the toughest issues facing our city. We need people who are not going to only care about the wealthiest and the connected as they come to the 3rd floor at City Hall, but someone who will truly serve all of us, all of us. I bring that experience from my work with public schools, with my work with affordable housing, and so much more. So thank you in advance for casting one of your votes for me, Michelle Dillingham. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mika Owens.
Thank you again. Coalition for Just Hamilton County, thank you for putting this important forum together. My name is Mika Owens. I'm running for Cincinnati City Council. And I am excited to be in this race because lived experience matters. Again, as a single mom who's experienced housing insecurity in this city, I get it. As a small business owner, I get it. And investing in small businesses, Black-owned businesses, women-led businesses, particularly as we come out of this pandemic and how we rebuild an economy. It's so important. Representation matters, and it's so important that people see themselves in the folks that are making decisions. As an organizer, democracy is important to me, and that's why I've showed up in community, registering voters, connecting in the community, driving voters to the polls, because as elected officials, that responsibility doesn't change to show up. And you will get that in me, a person that knows how to advocate for people and the issues that matter, work collaboratively with others, and get results. And that's what we need, big vision and people that are ready to move together in this city. Thank you, Mika Owens, votemika.com.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Michelle Dillingham, Reggie Harris, and Mika Owens for joining us on today's City Council Candidates Forum. First, and wish each of you God's best. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
And just a reminder, as they're going off, and we're going to bring on our next slate of candidates and I'll stay on. We are expected today at 8 o'clock to be joined by Scottie Johnson, Stacy Smith, Tierra Powell, and Kurt Grossman. In the meantime, as we are inviting our new panelists, Jenny Brown and Minister Kathy Tyler to join us, I just want to remind our listening audience, whether you're on Zoom, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on Twitter this evening, that first of all, early voting has already started. It's too late to vote or to register to vote if you haven't already, but you can start voting right away. Again, the Coalition of Just Hamilton County is made up of organizations, civil rights persons, and citizens, everyday citizens, who have an interest in ensuring justice across Hamilton County. So we are going to be joined, I see them coming in, by Scottie Johnson, Tierra Powell, I see Kurt Grossman coming on. And so from 8 to 9 p.m., they also will have an opportunity to vie for your vote. We're going to demote Barbara Wolf as we're bringing up Jenny Brown, and then I know she's bringing in the other council candidates. So again, I want to thank everybody who is joining us here this evening. We're going to invite you, if you're listening, to stay on for the next hour. I'm your co-moderator, Tracy Hunter. I am being joined for the second half by Jenny Brown and Kathy Tyler. The ground rules for this evening's second half are the same as the first. Each candidate will have 1 minute to introduce yourselves, followed by a series of questions that will be presented from co-moderators Kathy Tyler, Jenny Brown, as well as myself. If we have an opportunity to take any audience questions, as we did first half, we will interject those as time allows. Any questions from the candidates? I see Scottie, I see Tierra, I see Kurt Grossman. Any questions before we begin? Okay, just make sure that when you speak that you unmute yourself. And again, our timekeepers for this evening is a blue sky timer, so I will ask that the candidates please be mindful that there is a timer that will count down, and when it hits 0, we ask that you wrap up whatever statement that you're making. Please wrap it up so that we can move to the next person. And we also have an assistant backup timekeeper as well, Diane Beaker and Mike Shyrock. Mike, you want to wave to the camera? All right. Well, with that, we're ready to begin. Dr. Vanessa Enoch is handling all of the technology this evening. Again, welcome to tonight's Political Candidates Forum featuring the candidates for Cincinnati City Council. The first minute, I will allow each person to introduce themselves. I'll start with you, Scottie Johnson. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Pastor Hunter. Thank you very much and welcome. Thank you to a Coalition for Just Hamilton County. I'm Scottie Johnson. I'm a lifelong resident, except for about, I guess, 6 years when I left and went away. Didn't take me 6 years to graduate from school, but about 6 years I left one and went away. 33-year veteran of the Cincinnati Police Department, retired about 17 months ago. I am running for city council because, number one, we need courageous, transparent leadership at City Hall. We have to have people that are willing to get outside the box, even if it means standing alone, to do what's right in public service for the citizens of Cincinnati. I know a little bit about public service. I did it for 33 years, and I'm willing to go and do it again at the legislative level. I'm Scottie Johnson, candidate for Cincinnati City Council.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Tierra Powell, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Unmute yourself, you have 1 minute. We can't hear you. And you look unmuted, so I'm not sure why we cannot hear you. Okay. Tierra, while you work on your technology, I'm going to move to Kurt Grossman and I'll come back to you. If we can't hear him, then we know it's our problem.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity to meet with the Coalition for a Just Hamilton County. Pastor Hunter, I've been following you a long time. Glad to see you're up and about. That's a good thing. In my background, I'm an engineer turned patent attorney, and I spent the last several decades basically helping people solve complex problems. And I see a city that doesn't do that. In fact, I see a city that makes headlines that embarrass us and headlines that prove that we have a group of people who don't want to do the right thing and follow the rules. I believe in honesty and integrity. And when I saw the headlines, having grown up in Youngstown, Ohio, a very corrupt city, and I saw what was happening here and the inquirer saying, well, we're not the most corrupt city in Ohio, I decided we need some adults in the room. So I'm Kurt Grossman, and I'm hoping for one of your votes come November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It doesn't appear that Tierra Powell has rejoined us yet. She's having technical difficulties, so I'm going to move on with questions, and when she joins us, I'll allow her to introduce herself as well.
She's being promoted right now. She is back on the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Tierra, you have a minute to introduce yourself.
Hold on, let me see if she can talk yet. There she is.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, sorry I'm connected to another webinar, but so my name is Tierra Powell and I am running for city council. That was the question, right? Before I disconnected, or am I just introducing myself? Sorry. Okay, so I'm Tierra Powell. I am a trustee with East Westwood Improvement Association. I'm a longtime Cincinnati resident, born and raised here. I'm also a small business owner. I own TND's Party Room on the west side. He was not represented or has not been represented at City Hall, and it's time for me to step up to be a leader because I did not see one.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Powell. You still seem to be having some technical issues on your end, so I'll ask you to try to work on those if possible. You were cutting in and out. And so the first question for tonight's candidates is, what would you consider, or what do you consider to be Cincinnati's 3 most pressing issues if you are elected to City Council? And I'll start with you, Mr. Grossman.
Thank you. I think it's easy to identify the 3 most pressing problems. First and foremost is we don't even have a written code of ethics for our city council members. That's an embarrassment, and it has to change, and it can change quickly. Second is, as I think everybody recognizes, we have an affordable housing crisis. It's not a problem, it's a crisis. And it comes from an underbelly of racism and poverty that keeps people in that mode. I think we need to bring everybody together. We have a lot of businesses in this town who can help put together a real plan to get real jobs for people, well-paying jobs, so we can lift people up out of the cycle of poverty. I hear too often about the single mom working 2 jobs to try and put food on the table and a roof over their head, and then being told, well, go get training to get a better job. And the answer is what? With the 5 minutes she has left to sleep? That's just not going to happen. What I want to see us do is lift everybody out so we have hope and a future. And I think we can do that. We have the will to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. question is, what is Cincinnati's three, or are Cincinnati's three most pressing issues should you be elected to city council that you would immediately start working on?
Thank you. First and foremost, we have to have the courage to talk about the disparities in this city. The disparities in this city have continued. I think those are things that people have surfacely addressed, but there really hasn't been a courageous conversation to talk about the disparities in this city. Number two, what I have to say, we have to get a handle on, although crime numbers are down, we got to get a handle on crime. We got to get a handle on the shootings and the homicides in the city of Cincinnati. And number three is housing. We got to make sure people have somewhere to live. We got to make sure everybody has that place to go that stops the world at the door, so they can have a refuge to refresh and readjust to what's happening going on during the day. So disparity, crime, and housing. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Powell, if elected to Cincinnati City Council, what would be your first three most pressing issues to address?
So my top three, first one would be gun violence, because we have seen a really big uptick in gun violence that is really affecting our communities, especially our children and young people. The second one would be, for me, is housing. As a landlord, I am getting bombarded with a bunch of calls because people are literally being displaced out of their homes with no time to move and nowhere to move, and at high rates with expensive rents. The third thing for me would be pedestrian safety. We are seeing a lot of people being hit by cars. We're seeing people going 60 miles an hour on residential streets. We're also seeing neighborhoods that need sidewalks and crosswalks. So those are my three.
Thank you very much. Jenny Brown, first co-moderator.
Thank you for joining us. And I will start with Ms. Powell. The question I have is, the city of Cincinnati is designated as a sanctuary city. Do you agree with that plan, or do you plan to change it? And does being a sanctuary city take away from our citizens who also have needs? Why or why not?
I don't think that it takes away from our citizens that have needs. I think that they are finding resources for those that are coming in for us to be a sanctuary city. But I do think that it's important for us to use those same resources, or find resources to help those that are already here. I think it sends a message, and a lot of people are not happy with that, because we do have residents here that need help. And us being so many people advocating for people to come in here as a sanctuary city, I think it's okay, but we do need to try to focus on our people, because we have a lot of people here that are homeless, and I know those are coming in are being provided housing. And so the question becomes, where did that housing come from if we did not provide it to the people that are already here?
Thank you. And Mr. Grossman, I'll ask you the same question. Did you need me to repeat it?
No, I think I haven't. First of all, as an immigration reform advocate, I'm very familiar with the term and what it means and what it doesn't mean. For a city like Cincinnati to call itself a sanctuary city is just an aspiration. To be a true sanctuary city, you have to control the jail, and by law, the city doesn't control the jail. Sheriff McGuffey does, and she's taking care of that in her own end. I don't want to see anything done that hurts our residents and the people who live here, but I think we can chew gum and walk at the same time. We can and we should be having the hard discussions it takes to find out why people are being left out and how we get them back into the system in a positive way, so they have the housing they need, they have the safety they need by reducing crime and gun violence in their neighborhoods. I think we can do all that, and I don't see immigrants as being the source of those problems. And in fact, most immigrants are trying to escape even worse problems than we face here. But I think we have it. I've met a lot of people in this community who care greatly about what's going on, and they're just waiting for a council to have the political resolve to help get it done. That's what I plan to do.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
I think first and foremost, we would have to work on clarifying what exactly a sanctuary city is and what all that entails. I'm in complete favor of Cincinnati becoming a sanctuary city, because guess what? Every last one But to rebuild, we have to have the courage to possibly, especially when it comes to small businesses, provide grants, as Ms. Powell alluded to, but then also in addition to that, partner with the private sector to provide low to no interest loans in some arenas if people qualify. Those are things that can be done to rebuild and help to kickstart the an economic engine in the city. We understand small businesses are really the core, the heart, the blood, sweat, and tears of small businesses really maintain our 52 communities and help to move Cincinnati forward. So when we find out exactly what that impact is, and possibly small, zero to no interest loan, zero to small interest loans to those small businesses. And if money is provided from the Recovery Act, provide that money also. But I still don't think we know the full extent of how the impact of the COVID has had on the city and small businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Grossman, would you like the question repeated?
No, I think I have it. First of all, I think the impact has been devastating. I don't think we need to wait to know how bad it has been. Women in particular were more adversely affected than any other group in our society because it was women who ended up going home to take care of the family. And they can't they're not back in the workforce. So we've had a severe hit there. And it is clear, as Scottie said, that small businesses are the backbone of our whole country. We need to do whatever it takes to keep small businesses afloat and get many of them back into business or get others into the business. We can do microloans, we can do loans. We should be focusing loans on minority and Black-owned businesses because those will be what lift us up. The ARP money that's coming that they referred to should definitely be spent there. It should be spent in part on making sure we have childcare so the mom can go to work if she wants to or get training if she wants to. It should be spent on making sure we have safe housing for everybody. And it should be spent on making sure we have businesses back in business, not just the big businesses, the small businesses. And it takes everybody. I mean, it does take a village to raise people. And we have to act like a village again in order to come through this. Just as 100 years ago, we had to do it then. We can do it again.
Thank you, Mr. Grossman. You're muted, Judge.
Thank you. My next question will first be directed to Kurt Grossman, and that question is, what political party are you affiliated with? How long have you been affiliated with it, and why are you affiliated with it?
Okay, well, I'm a lifelong Democrat. I grew up in Youngstown in the shadow of the steel mills and the Lordstown auto plant. So I understand the plight of the working people. My mom, as a feminist, long before people knew what the word was building businesses with my grandfather. In fact, my dad married into one of those businesses. And it was through my dad's effort that his business unionized under the Teamsters Union to make sure they had safe working conditions and had living wages. He didn't want to leave it to chance. But that's been my upbringing, and hard work and taking care of people and having compassion for people to help them do their best is what attracted me, because I believe the Democratic Party stands for those things. It's not always perfect, but I consider it a far sight better than what I see from the other leading party, especially these days. I don't recall if there was a second part of the question.
I think you've answered it sufficiently. It was what, why, and how long.
Okay.
Gee.
I think I did.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll direct it next to Mr. Johnson, Scottie Johnson. What political party are you affiliated with? How long have you been affiliated with it, and why are you affiliated with it?
Lifetime Democrat. I think that's two. Lifetime Democrat. Why? Let's be honest about something. It's coming up in a union family and having worked 33 years with the Cincinnati Police Department with a union that I always don't agree with and didn't always agree with. That's why we have the Sentinel Police Association. But I think the Democratic Party, to be quite honest, not perfect by any way, by any stretch of the imagination. But when it comes to compassion, when it comes to bringing everybody, attempting to bring everybody to the table, the Democratic Party does a better job. When you're talking about including everybody, the Democratic Party has done a better job. So the main reason why is because I want everybody to have the opportunity to dine and eat at the table of opportunity. And the Democratic Party has done a better job than the other leading party who right now, to be quite honest, doesn't even deserve to be mentioned by name because of stances that are going on, what has been going on, stances that are going on, they're trying to keep people from voting, stances that have been going on to try to eliminate opportunities. Those things are just stuff that is unacceptable. And that's why I'm a part of the Democratic Party. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Tierra Powell, Ms. Powell.
Yes, I am a lifelong Democrat. When my mom used to go vote and I used to do the kids vote, and that is where I understood about the different political parties. And for me, the Democratic Party was one that was inclusive. It included everybody, all walks of life, while there are other parties that work to exclude people. So my mom always referred to the Democrats as the party of the people, which is why I've always considered myself a Democrat, because I think that we should be very inclusive.
Thank you. Ms. Brown.
Thank you. And I will start my question off with Ms. Powell. And the question is, many people lost their jobs due to COVID-19. Or put people back to work in Cincinnati.
Yes. I think that one thing that we've seen is that we need to work with the organizations like Cincinnati Works and all of the local businesses here, because we do see that there are vacant positions that have not been filled. So I think that we've done a good job in East Westwood with linking some of our young people with these organizations. We had an event recently with Cincinnati
do, be willing to stand alone, but at least present the argument, present the foundation to move the needle. So we're not looking at a track record of people and what they have done.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with Mr. Scottie Johnson. How will you increase the number of Black-owned businesses in Cincinnati?
Well, number one, we got to be willing, first of all, we got to be willing to, like I said, provide grants and low interest to no interest loans to start up Black businesses. We got to be willing to say we got to be willing to have that conversation to say, how do we increase population? How do we increase and show really beyond a mural that Black lives matter? The mural's great. Thank God it's there. But we got to have those conversations and do things that show Black lives do matter holistically, not just interacting with the police. So very low interest to zero interest loans and partnering with our banks, the major banks in this city, to move that needle of disparity that I've talked about to get the work done. So that's how you do it. We got grants going on in other cities like Nashville and Atlanta and Indianapolis. We can look for those grants, and zero to low interest loans for startup Black businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Grossman?
I completely agree with Scottie. We need to get a kickstart for a lot of people. We need to find the people who want to start and run businesses. There are some great microloan programs in this city. I've talked to a couple folks who do that. They're looking for more people who want that help, and they need an infusion of capital to help them make that happen. And that's what we can do. The ARP money, I think, is the opportunity. It's not a windfall. It's our money coming back to us, and we should use it wisely because we need to encourage Black-owned and women-owned businesses to grow, to begin, grow, and flourish. And we have a lot of people in this community, as I've gone across from neighborhood to neighborhood, in the fabulous 52, as I call them, who want to do just that and aren't sure how to proceed. And we as council can get that message out and sit down with these folks and lead them to the right path so they can drink from the water, as you say, and build their businesses and build their livelihoods and build futures for themselves and their families. When you build that future, you have hope and you elevate everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tierra Powell?
Yes, I think that outreach and support is important, specifically with the grants that the city and different organizations can provide. A lot of time recently, as I discovered, there is money out there for different things. We just aren't told about it, or we don't know about it, or we don't know where to find it. So I think that not only do we need to have loans, microloans, and grants, to get the message out to the people that, hey, this money is available so that we can provide it. And we also need to give people the resources. Not everybody is going to be able to go out and get a business degree, specifically a lot of Black people in the city. So we need to bring resources to the community to not only give them money to start their businesses, but the resources to show them how to run and maintain their businesses for profit.
Thank you. Was that the last candidate for that question? All right, the next question is, I'm going to take an audience question. And an anonymous attendee asks, do you agree that regentrification has caused the decline of Black families in Cincinnati? And Tierra Powell, I'll start with you on that question.
Okay, so I think that it has played a role. I think that with a lot of the housing in Cincinnati that we've seen, it has displaced people. People have had to split up their families in order to relocate. Some housing is very specific, especially if you have subsidy housing about who can stay there. So I think that it has played a very huge role.
Thank you. Mr. Grossman, Kurt Grossman?
I think in the first simple word, the answer is yes. That some amount of that would happen Part of what we want to do is bring in people with money to spend it in the local businesses and the restaurants and encourage people. But there's been too much of it. I think we see this in Over the Rhine, that so many people got pushed out. The stadium pushed a lot of people out without any real plan to help people live out their lives in the way they're used to living. We need to get with our community councils. I'm on the board of the Downtown Residents Council, so I'm very familiar with some of those issues. We need to get down into the weeds to figure out what do we do to make sure that we maintain the character and diversity of all of our neighborhoods and grow it and enhance it. I don't want to see us create ghettos. I don't want to see us create white ghettos either. I want to see us create a mix of communities and a mix of people who want to enjoy their lives together. And we see it in some communities working very well, but in others, it's not. And it's creating a fracture for those who are subject to being moved out without any help to reestablish their lives.
Okay, thank you very much. And Scottie Johnson, Mr. Johnson.
Could you repeat that question, Pastor? I'm sorry.
Yes, the question presented by an attendee, audience attendee, is do you agree that regentrification has caused the decline of Black families in Cincinnati?
Yeah, the simple answer, yes, it has. There are a number of things that have contributed to the decline of the Black family, but regentrification is one of them. As Ms. Powell alluded to, when you talk about housing and who can live there and all the different stipulations causes stress, and it causes a divide in the family. So yes, it has contributed. It is a factor, but we know there are a lot of other factors that in society that have contributed to the demise of the Black family. So the simple answer is yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Brown.
Yes, and I will start my question off with Mr. Johnson. How do you feel about the proposal that city council's pay should be reduced?
It's an elitist move. It's a ridiculous elitist move that Mr. Brinkman brought to. You think about it. I'm a very, very frank person. There's a lot wrapped up in issue 3. I think it is issue 3. It's a lot wrapped up. But you start off talking about corruption and transparency. That sounds great. But as you do a deeper dive, and I'm not going to try to perpetrate like I know everything that's in it, but there's a lot wrapped up in there. But if you start talking about cutting council's pay and things like that, you're moving to a situation where only the rich and the very comfortable would be willing to run for council. So those are things that I don't agree with. I think some people call council a part-time job. If you're doing it right, you should be working every day to improve the lives of the citizens of Cincinnati. Public service is a 24-hour, 365-day-a-year job if you're doing it right. So to answer your question, no, I do not agree with cutting council's pay. I don't want to see just the elite and the comfortable that vie for the opportunity to serve the citizens of Cincinnati. No on issue 3.
Thank you. And Ms. Powell?
So no, I do not agree with reducing council's pay. We see that council is listed as a part-time job, but it is full-time. Running for council is a full-time job. So no, I don't think that's okay. I do think that we have had issues with already not having a very diverse council in regards to class or economic status. So I think that lowering the salary would make it even worse.
Thank you. And Mr. Grossman?
I frankly think it's a ridiculous idea. It won't affect me personally because, like I said, I'm not keeping my council paychecks. I'm donating them to charity. But what I don't want to do is create an elitist council that only the people who are really rich can afford to run, or only people who can afford to do it as a very part-time job. Neither of those is healthy. And let's understand, this came from a man who's getting paid more than what city council gets paid to be a state representative with a constituency that's close to a third the size of our constituency in Cincinnati. and less territory than the city of Cincinnati, and a job that he admits is part-time, but he has never once proposed cutting his pay, has never once proposed giving any of his pay back to anybody. Instead, he wants to force the city council to be part-time with a mandate to review every single piece of litigation that this city might bring. That's every parking ticket, every eviction defense, everything. And if you want to talk about overwhelming a group of people, have a group of council made up of people who are not always lawyers, trying to debate every single piece of litigation and try and do that in a part-time job. That's just crazy. I think Scottie hit the nail on the head, and Tierra the same thing. This is a full-time plus job. I know I'll be putting my nose to the grindstone, and I expect everybody else on this call will be as well, because we care about our city and we know you can't do it just by sitting back and snoozing.
Thank you.
So no on
Thank
issue
you.
3.
Our next question will begin with Mr. Grossman. And the question is, how do you recommend that the city of Cincinnati use or distribute the $290 million that it received as part of the American Rescue Plan Act?
First of all, I want to say that what they did with the first part of it, I think was terrible. We had so many opportunities to help our community in so many ways, and they missed the boat. We have a serious child care problem for people trying to get back on their feet. There was a proposal to make it 5 million. It only came out at $1 million. Because what happened here is, despite the mayor coming out with his program of here's what I want to do with the money, which he wasn't supposed to do, and every council person, sitting council person, then saying, well, I'll meet, I'll have task force, let's hear what the community wants. They basically ended up adopting exactly what the mayor said. They punted. They didn't spend money on infrastructure. We have serious infrastructure problems, and ARP money is allowed for what we call under the ground infrastructure like sewer and water. What did they do? They didn't spend that money. They raised your taxes by increasing water fees for 5 years by an extraordinary amount. That's not the way to go about spending the money that's coming back to us.
Thank you.
I think my time's up. Thank you. Oh, wait, I have 30 seconds? Here's my time. Because I think we need to focus on what the real needs of the people in our community. As I said, this is money coming back to us. Let's spend it back for the people in our community, get people back to work, get people lifting up out of poverty, give them opportunities, excuse me, to improve their lives. That's what our money coming back to us should have been used for. And we have a second swipe at the apple with a new council and a new mayor come this winter when the next round comes.
Thank you. Ms. Tierra Powell, how do you recommend that the city of Cincinnati use or distribute the $290 million that it received as part of the American Rescue Plan Act?
I think that the city needs to communicate with councils, and that's a way to get the voice of the residents. Recently, Councilman Greg Landsman had the Safe and Clean Fund, which East Westwood and myself was a big part of. I think initiatives like that for that American Fund Act is important. It's something that helps the community, gives back to the community. So I think unless you talking to the communities and knowing what is needed, they're just going to put that money wherever they want, which is what we've already seen. But we definitely need to be in touch with the people to know where to put it.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. Mr. Scottie Johnson, how do you recommend that the city of Cincinnati use or distribute the $290 million that it received as part of the American Rescue Plan?
I think it's been said by Ms. Powell and Mr. Grossman. First and foremost, you got to find out where the need is, and that conversation has to come from the people of the citizens of Cincinnati in public service. So if it's, I would recommend, and not to get specific, but after hearing from the people, first and foremost, if that money should be used in uplifting people, uplifting, as Kurt alluded to, childcare, reinvesting in people that need training, reinvesting in our communities where we bring back people, investing in people so Cincinnati moves the needle of disparity, investing in people so people feel like they have a council and a government that cares about them and wants to see them succeed. So I want to see that money used investing in people. Yes, there are some brick and mortar things that need to be done, but we got to be willing to uplift people, invest in people, and show people that we are trustworthy and care about what's going on with them.
Okay, thank you very much. It's about that time for us to wrap up so that we will end our forum today on schedule at 9 p.m. And so in our final few minutes, I will give each candidate an opportunity to make one last vie for for the office of Cincinnati City Council candidate. So if you would just tell us why it is that you're running and why the people should vote for you. And we'll start with you, Mr. Johnson.
Well, let me say first and foremost, thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you for Coalition for a Just Hamilton County. Thank you very much for inviting me. First and foremost, we need leadership, courageous, transparent leadership. We need people that are willing to do things differently to move the needle in the city of Cincinnati. I've got a track record of three-term president of the Sentinel Police Association of moving the needle of injustice in the police department. Having the courage to stand alone and do what's right in service to the people. Public service is what I've done. Public service is what I know. And I want to make sure the people of Cincinnati, every citizen in Cincinnati, is treated fairly and given the same opportunity. We got too much disparity in the city, and it's time to get back to bridge building, inclusivity, and making sure every citizen has an opportunity. I'm Scottie Johnson. That's what I've done. That's what I'm going to do. Go to Scottie for Cincinnati. If you haven't already voted, give me one of those votes and you'll see I'm accountable to the citizens of Cincinnati, have been and will be. Thank you very much, Judge, for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Powell, Tierra Powell.
Okay, and I also want to say thank you for the opportunity for talking about my platform here. So I just want to tell people that I'm running because I feel like we just didn't have a voice in certain communities. We didn't have leaders. We were told that, yes, certain communities have been forgotten. We just don't need leaders that have forgotten about any communities. So I'm here to say that I will never forget about any communities because I come from a forgotten community. I've been fighting for grocery stores. I've been fighting against the gun violence. I've been doing all of this and talking to people in my community for years. I didn't just start getting out talking to people during canvassing. So I just ask that people go to my website, powellforcincy.com, or Citizens for Tierra Powell on Facebook, just to know more about me and to see what I've already been doing. I'm not new to this, and I just want to go ahead and take this down to City Hall so that everybody can have a voice and bring something different to City Hall.
Thank you very much. And finally, Kurt Grossman.
First, thank you, Pastor Hunter and the Coalition for a Just Hamilton County. It's been a wonderful opportunity to spend some time with you all. I look forward to other opportunities to do so as well. I'm running because of two words: integrity matters. We've seen the lack of that, the lack of transparency that leads to the widespread feel among too many of our communities that they feel ignored. That's not acceptable. We have to change that. And what you heard tonight from all three of us at a bottom line was we need to have some of those hard discussions, those hard conversations. I know I have a track record that proves I do that. I've done it for over 3 decades with very significant complex problems with people who had a lot on the line, anywhere from individuals to Fortune 100 companies. I've faced them all. I've faced the judges. I've done it in a way that brought them in a trusting way to bring everybody together to find the real solutions to their real problems. And that's what I would bring to council. So come November 2nd, if you haven't voted already, I'd ask for one of your votes. And if you go to grossmanforcouncil.com, you'll find out about me, and look forward to hearing from you all more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to again thank all of our candidates this evening that elected to participate, that were invited: Scottie Johnson, Tierra Powell, Kurt Grossman. The Coalition for Just Hamilton County did not invite all of the candidates to participate. There were 18 candidates out of the 35 plus that are running that we specifically invited to participate. And of the 18 that we invited to participate, there were 4, I believe, that committed and failed to show up and failed to notify us that they were not showing up. And that would be Jane Frundorf, Jeff Cramerding, Stacy Smith, and Logan Peter Simmering. So they were invited and in fact had committed and failed to show up. And so we thank all of you who did participate, that were selectively invited to participate in the coalition. We have a specific mission, the Coalition of Just Hamilton County, and that's to promote justice across Hamilton County as a whole. I want to thank all of those of the Coalition for Just Hamilton County, near and far, those who view tonight, whether on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, those who helped put the forum together. It's been a lot of labor. I want to specifically thank Dr. Vanessa Enoch, who ran all of the technology this evening. I want to thank all of our co-moderators, Barbara Wolf, Carol Patton, Jenny Brown, Kathy Tyler, those behind the scenes that worked really hard, Reverend Dorsey, Mike Shyrock, Diane Beaker, with the time. I think I said Barbara Wolf. So again, we want to thank all of you. The coalition is very vast, and it takes a lot of work, but we believe in the cause. And we just want to wish all of you success in your endeavors, whether you win or not. We thank you for putting in the time and the efforts to run. And so again, the coalition, I believe, may be making endorsements, you'll know in the future. But again, we just want to thank you for your participation on tonight's event. And this particular recording will continue to be made available again on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as Zoom. So again, thanks so much for joining us, everybody. God bless you and have a very great evening.
Well done. Very well done. A lot of forms. Well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.